All right, you're good to go.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Seattle Planning Commission. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. On behalf of the Seattle Planning Commission, we'd like to actively recognize that we are on Indigenous land, the current and traditional territories of the Coast Salish people who've lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We acknowledge, too, that the role of traditional Western-centric planning practices have played in harming, displacing, and attempting to erase Native communities. We commit to identifying racist practices and striving to remove them and acknowledge them, address them, and strive to center restorative land stewardship rather than unsustainable and extractive use of the land. Some announcements to any members of the public or visitors. Welcome. We are happy to make all commission meetings open to the public, and please note that the Planning Commission does not hold public hearings since the commission is an advisory body. We provide recommendations to elected leaders that in turn make the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately to elected officials directly. This meeting is a hybrid meeting where some individuals are participating remotely while others are participating in the boards and commissions room at Seattle City Hall. Let's bring up the color brave space norms. I'd like to ask our commissioners to review our color brave space norms that are on the screen. And I'd like to ask today, let's just do one, to have a commissioner choose one to read aloud for us to hold as we go through our meeting today. Yes. Do I have any volunteers?
I can volunteer. This is Julio
Thank you,
Sanchez.
Julio.
Greeting fellow commissioners and staff. Practice examining racially biased systems. Systems are what are left after all the people in this room lives.
It's a good one for today. Thanks, Julio. On the agenda today, we have two agenda items: a discussion with Councilmember Dan Strauss, chair of the Seattle City Council's Land Use Committee, and a preliminary discussion on the Industrial and Maritime Strategy comment letter the Commission will be preparing as related to the comprehensive plan amendments, as the comprehensive plan amendments are considered by City Council. Before we do that, we're going to approve the minutes really quickly. So these are the minutes from the January 12th meeting. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Rick.
Thanks, Rick. Is there a second?
Rocky will second.
Thank you, Rocky. Any changes or amendments? Okay. All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, with that, just some upcoming meetings. The next Housing and Neighborhood Committee meeting is next Thursday, February 2nd from 7:30 to 9 a.m. Our next full commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday, February 9th from 3 to 5:30 p.m. Both those meetings are also hybrid with MS Teams and in person. And I will pass to Vanessa for some announcements before we move to our guest, because I know we want to respect his time today.
Thank you, Jamie. So just as Jamie noted, just want to remind members of the public that this is a hybrid meeting. The only people who are actually in the boards and commissions room this morning are commission staff. We'll get to introductions in a moment. All commissioners are participating remotely via MS Teams. I'd like to ask that commissioners use the chat function of MS Teams to be recognized by the chair or myself if you have a question or a comment. And I'd like to remind both commissioners and Jamie to please note as you're making a comment state your name. A member of the public brought to my attention that he was having trouble figuring out who was talking at what time. So please do that. I will read public comment. I received one email that I will read at the end of the meeting at 8:55. We don't have any members of the public joining us here in the boards and commissions room, but if somebody does join us, I will let you know, Jamie, so you can recognize that person. Also like to remind commissioners that we're holding a trial MS Teams meeting at noon today, just to try out using your email addresses instead of the live presenter email addresses that the city has assigned you. Right now, we only have 2 commissioners who have indicated they can participate. This should only take about no more than 15 minutes. So if you do have time at 12 o'clock to join, please let Olivia know and she will send out that invitation at 10 o'clock this morning. Also like to announce that starting from today, we will be recording our commission meetings and posting them to our website via YouTube the day after the meeting. So that'll be tomorrow. And also want to remind any individuals listening in that recording will not serve as our public record of our meeting. That will be done actually through our minutes that will be approved at the next commission meeting. So with that, I'd like Jamie to start the introductions, and I will call on commissioners by name so you all don't have to figure out who is what number. Then we can get on to our first agenda item.
Thanks, Vanessa. So we'll start our commissioner introductions. So do your name, pronouns, neighborhood you live in, and if you want to say anything about your day job, you can. And our question for today is something that made you smile in the last week. What's something that made you smile in the last week? Especially during these dark days, I feel like I need to think about what makes me smile. So I'm Jamie Strobel. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the future 130th station area. I work in climate change and environmental justice. And something that made me smile is I got a totally surprise package dropped off at my house by my former employee. That was a care package because we lost someone in our family recently, and it was totally out of the blue and just reminds me how important it is for us to small acts of kindness go a long way to support each other. So I'm probably going to pass that along to someone else.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, next person.
Thank you, Jamie. Sorry to cut you off there. Rick, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Moeller, use he, him pronouns. I live between Wallingford and Green Lake in District 6. Delighted to have Councilmember Strauss here. I am an architect, teach at the UW. Something that made me smile, I went out to dinner last night and had Indian food, chicken vindaloo, super hot, and that always makes me smile.
Thank you, Rick. Michaela.
Good morning, Michaela Daffern. I live in Capitol Hill. I work in affordable housing planning and policy, and I use she, her pronouns. And I think it's been a really serious week for me. So I think the first thing that came to mind for something that made me smile was actually some delicious Indian food that I made this weekend. So Rick and I are enjoying the same things this week.
Thank you, Michaela. I'm noting a theme. How about Rocky?
Good morning. I love Indian food, so my stomach is crumbling right now. I live in Finney Ridge, he, him pronouns. I work in for-profit infill housing development, and I went snow camping last weekend. Kind of tent in the snow out near like Roslyn, Clay Elm area, and walked around in the snow on snowshoes, and that made me smile.
Excellent. Thank you, Rocky. Rose?
Good morning. I'm Rose Lucella Whitson. My pronouns are she, her. I live up north in Licton Springs, and I work for Jacobs Engineering as a wetland biologist and permitting specialist. Something that brought me joy. So So unfortunately, I've been sick, and if I drop off, that's why. And I was disappointed to bring in the Lunar New Year sick and not able to celebrate with friends or family. But what brought me joy and a smile is that the friend I was supposed to make food with came up all the way from South Seattle through traffic just to bring me food for the Lunar New Year. So it brought me a lot of joy.
Excellent. I hope you're feeling better and on the road to recovery. Matt.
My name is Matt Hutchins. I use he, him pronouns. I'm an architect. I live in West Seattle. I am teaching my daughter how to snowboard, and that is a joy.
Excellent. Thank you. Radhika?
Hi everyone, I'm Radhika Nair. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Wedgwood and work in public policy. Something that's made me smile is I've been trying to teach my son to play the violin, and he hasn't been able to hold the violin. He finally figured out how to hold one half of the instrument, so that made me smile.
So excellent. Thank you. Caleb?
Hello, my name is Caleb Twolde. He, him pronouns. I live in Columbia City, and I work at Rainier Scholars as our leadership development coordinator. And one thing that's made me smile this week, I coach basketball at Seattle Academy, and we have some scholars on some of our middle school teams there. And so I got to watch some of our like 6th and 7th graders play earlier this week, and it was really funny to see some of the celebrations they had after making baskets and stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Caleb. Mark?
Hi, Mark Brassett. I use he, him pronouns. I live in the Maple Leaf neighborhood, and one thing that made me smile is probably TMI, but my family's been having the stomach flu go through them one by one this last week and through this week, and my son got it last night. And it was his first kind of real bad bug since since he was, a little kid. So he's 6 now. And I was trying to show him how to get into a better position to throw up over the toilet. And as he finally got done, he turned to me and said, "Did I do it right, Dad?" With a big smile on his face. And yeah, you did. I guess you did it right. That was what I was trying to get at. I was trying to get you in a more comfortable position to get through this. But anyway, so it just brought a chuckle. So he's doing good now, though.
Good. I hope the bug finishes with your family soon.
Yeah.
Julio.
Hello, my name is Julio Sanchez. My pronouns are he, him. I normally reside when in Seattle in Capitol Hill. And my areas of interest are community engagement, environmental justice, and outreach. Something that brings a smile whenever it happens is my cat standing in front of his completely full plate of food, demanding the special treat food that he only gets when special occasions happen. And he does this by staring at me, staring at his regular food pile, and staring at me again saying, "Okay, where is the special stuff?" That brings a smile to my face.
Thank you, Julio. Dalton?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Dalton Owens. He, him pronouns. I also live in District 6. I live in Ballard. I'm a project engineer for Venture General Contracting, focusing in tenant improvement projects. And something that's made me smile recently, I was scrolling through Facebook yesterday and I saw my older cousin who has 2 daughters, one's 6 and one 8. They're selling Girl Scout cookies. It's that time of the year, so they had a little promotional material that they had put together. So that was super cute to watch, and yeah, got me spending some money.
Thank you, Dalton. And David.
I feel like I must be the caboose at this point.
You are the caboose.
David Goldberg, he, him pronouns. I live in the Wallingford Urban Village, District 4. I thought we would shift over District 6 this go around, but I think we stayed put. I work for the State Department of Transportation, and welcome, Councilmember Strauss.
What made you smile this week, David?
Oh, what made me smile? I have a friend who's announced that he's coming to town for the weekend, and we'll go out for Indian food. I'm not sure about the
Way
last
to bring it full circle. We'll just do quick staff introductions. Olivia, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Olivia Baker. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff to the commission. And something that made me smile this week was meeting my coworker Robin for the first time in real life because she's fully remote. So that was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Olivia. Robin?
Olivia stole my smile thing, but anyhow, Robin McGonigal, staff for the commission. I use she, her pronouns. What made me smile is that my rest of my staff members came out to Vashon for a staff meeting yesterday, and it was great. And yes, that was the first time I got to meet Olivia, and because of Teams, I didn't even realize it.
Thanks, Robin. John?
Good morning, all. I'm John Hoy, staff to the Planning Commission. I use he, him pronouns, and I would just echo everything that has been said by staff about spending time with staff together in person yesterday.
Thanks, John. I'll wrap us up. Vanessa Murdoch, I use she, her pronouns. I'm staff to the commission. Something that made me smile, in addition to seeing my colleagues in person yesterday and seeing Robin, is just starting to see buds around in my garden and in my neighborhood, which means that spring is on the way. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jamie.
Thanks, Vanessa. And so with that, thank you so much, Councilmember Strauss, who's chair of the Council's Land Use Committee, for being here this morning. And thank you for joining early to hear our introductions. We have about 40 minutes, so we have until 8:30 or however long you can stay for this agenda item. And we're eager to hear about your work of the committee, as well as share some of our recent work with you. So welcome.
Good morning. Sorry, I had to respond to a text message then I left it unread because I was listening to all of your introductions. So just before I get going, Councilmember Strauss, representing District 6, Ballard, Fremont, Finney, Green Lake, Greenwood, Crown Hill, and many other micro neighborhoods. Chair of the Land Use Committee. Just riffing off of what you all did, I think something that made me smile. Mark, your story was that really made me smile. That's pretty funny. I think also, David, lifting up some of your work that you did earlier in your career, getting to meet with a number of Fremont Ballard Greenway advocates this last night. This is going to be my third 10 to 12 hour day in a row. And so meeting with them about their 6th Avenue Greenway project and their work on 15th Avenue Northwest, 15th Avenue Northwest. Just really brought a smile to my face because it's great to get to work with them to see their vision through for a greenway on 6th Avenue. They want it to go to 58th. I want it to go to Carkeek Park. So it's kind of nice to try to push the advocates a little bit further. And we were able to secure some money for them in this last budget to keep the work going to 58th. I didn't get the money all the way to Carkeek Park. Sorry, still on my first cup of coffee for the day, so welcome to it. I would say, I'm here to have a conversation. I do need to leave right at 8:30, so if you want to interrupt or sit on a topic, please do. In this coming year, we're going to have a really busy land use committee. We're taking up some really big issues that have been in the wings for decades at times. And so we've got, tree legislation that's coming up hopefully this next month. There are going to be reforms to design review. I know that's neither of those are necessarily in your purview. We've got the Maritime Industrial Land Strategy. I know that the executive's office likes to say industrial maritime. It's reversed. Maritime is what comes first because we do have the closest freshwater port to the Gulf of Alaska, Bering Sea. and in Puget Sound. And we've also got the major update to the comprehensive plan coming this year, which is going to be a really big deal. I think it's important to recognize that at committee, Michael Hubner, presented that at the last major update, we built, or we made our estimates of how much we would grow and tried to make some planning decisions regarding that, and we have grown twice as fast as expected. And so I'm in my district office here in downtown Ballard right now, looking at a construction project that tore down a building that was built when Ballard was its own city. It was built in 1903, and that's emotionally difficult at times to see the neighborhood I grew up in torn down. And at the same time, it is making room for more people and adding vibrancy to our city. So I think I've kind of digressed there. There's some other important things coming. Seattle Transportation Plan, the SDOT merging all of their multiple plans. Had some really great conversations just this week about using, using bus lanes to allow freight, because the semi trucks are how we get our goods. The semi trucks are how we create 15-minute cities, because that's how you get the goods to the grocery store. And the difference between getting the groceries to the QFC on 24th compared to the Arts QFC up on Holman Road just demonstrates the challenges that come with density when we're trying to get our goods in. Because I think that what I've found is that folks that live in downtown Ballard really like a walkable neighborhood where they don't necessarily need to own a car. Some of them choose to. And that's only possible when we provide space for the freight of people, which is transit, and the freight of goods, which is semis and goods. All of that, adjacent to a working waterfront that is the closest freshwater port to all of Puget Sound, Gulf of Alaska, Bering Sea. So we've got a lot of really unique opportunities, a lot of unique challenges. It's just exciting to watch. It's exciting to be a part of. I will, and I'd say that I'd love to hear from you how you would like to participate in all of this in this coming year. I know I've worked with Rick on some really, and Marcus Johnson on looking at non-conforming uses within District 6. That was really exciting. So we'll have that at committee in the next month. But yeah, so the questions here are, how would you like to participate in this coming year? Receiving your letters, meeting with Vanessa is very helpful. Meeting with commissioners is helpful. And, I would say the letters are a great way to do it. It works totally fine. And if you'd like more, I'd say just raise your hand and let me know. Vanessa, do you want to talk about each of these topics one by one, or do commissioners just want to ask me questions? I'm kind of open. And that took all 6 minutes. Yeah.
You did a lot in 6 minutes. Thank you very much for that overview, and I'll just invite commissioners to note their name in the chat so that Jamie can recognize you to either ask Councilmember Strauss a question or respond to his question of how you all would like to be involved. I will note that a number of the issues that you noted, Councilmember Strauss, that will be coming before your committee, the commission is tracking very closely. Certainly the major update to the comprehensive plan. We are looking forward to that draft coming out in the spring and digging into that, as well as the accompanying draft environmental impact statement. The stars are aligning, or it's a perfect storm, I don't know which, as the Seattle Transportation Plan will also be coming out. The draft Seattle Transportation Plan will be coming out around the same time, and that accompanying draft EIS. So the commission will be really digging into that. Both of those plans, both of those draft plans and environmental review. We have been following the maritime and industrial strategy for many years and are looking forward to continuing to provide recommendations and comments on that strategy. on the comp plan amendments that will be proposed by the executive and brought to council later this spring in order to actually start implementing that strategy. And with that, definitely interested in 15-minute cities. And I would say as stewards of the comprehensive plan, the commission is very much involved in tracking the comp plan update and have released in the last year, 2022, 4 issue briefs that are issue specific related to the comp plan. And then the year before that, in August of 2021, the commission released recommended overarching themes for this next update to the plan, recommending themes that should actually carry through across all elements of the plan. So with that, I will invite commissioners to jump in with questions, comments, and or responses to Councilmember Strauss's question of how you all would like to be involved in this work as the year progresses.
Thanks, Vanessa. So as a reminder, please put your name in the chat if you have a question to get in the queue. And I see that David has already done that. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that overview. I was glad to hear you say that you're tracking the Seattle Transportation Plan. One of the concerns we've had on the Planning Commission is we see the Seattle Transportation Plan operating on a separate track from the comp plan, slightly ahead of the comp plan. And you may have seen, I hope, if you haven't, we'd love to come talk to you about our issue brief on repurposing the right-of-way, talking about all the needs we have for our right-of-way, apart from just making cars go through as many as possible, as fast as possible. And you know, we're hoping that some policy changes and get stronger in the comp plan that would have something to say about how the Seattle Transportation Plan comes out. So as the land use chair, it's great to hear you talk about it. But I'm curious how you see. Do you see the transportation plan largely at the province of the Transportation Committee, and how are you how do you think about reconciling the two plans, making sure they work together and give us the complete neighborhoods that you talked about and the ability to walk to things and address some of the other issues that we're facing as a city?
That's a really good question. You know, I think I'd have to talk to the chair of the Transportation Committee. Acting as the vice chair of the Transportation Committee gives me a unique opportunity to get to work with SDOT in a way that maybe some of my colleagues wouldn't. I think that, you know, what is most important for me is that when I look at our streets, you know, as compared to Portland, we have much more narrow right-of-ways than Portland, just generally. And so I think, David, having the conversation about greenways, even Portland had greenways before we did, and it took us a while to catch back up. And I was having this conversation with an individual, and who grew up in Portland, and it was very clear that it was because they have wider streets, they have fewer people, and how do we do that here? And I think that as we continue to become more dense, it is really critical that we provide a space for everyone and designate that space and then keep people in their lanes. Like, I know it's kind of that simple. Like, there are going to be merging conflicts, collisions, deaths, and accidents when we try to push everyone into the same space using different modes of transportation for different reasons. And so, you know, it's important that we have bike lanes. It's important that we have transit lanes. It's important that we have general purpose lanes. And how do we make all of those things mesh? And so it's something that I'm tracking really closely, and I really appreciate you making that reminder of the connection between the comp plan. I just know that our city is growing so quickly that we really have to figure out how to give everyone their lane and then keep them in their lane.
So it looks like we have a couple more folks in the queue. So I'm going to move to Matt, then Rick, and then Michaela.
Hello, Councilmember. How you doing? Let's see. I had first, I just wanted to voice support for the design review effort. exempting affordable housing is an important step. Seattle for Everyone has a proposal that is is informed by shareholders, that is basically a lot of technical fixes and also some just changes to the values that's going to have a big impact. So I would encourage you to support that. My question is really with the comp plan and the outreach. We saw probably about 2/3 of the comments were asking for alternative 5 to be either alternative 5 or more. And my question to you is, I guess, are you tracking that, and how do you see City Council being able to maybe augment the comp plan effort and kind of reflect that sort of will of the people who have responded to the outreach, i.e. like is there a way you can push them to do some of the more bolder changes that were called for in sort of alternative 6?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's really helpful. Yeah, I have been tracking this. I attended the outreach event at Loyal Heights in District 6. So I got to see who was participating, and I've been tracking their outreach pretty closely. I'd say that, right now, fortunately or unfortunately, the folks that are participating are the land use geeks of our city. And so I think what is important, just keeping that frame of mind that and in this role, I have found we do a lot of outreach and work with principal stakeholders or overly engaged individuals in our city, and then it comes out to the general public, and the general public starts paying attention, and there's conflict there. So I say that to mean it's important that over the next few months, and as these proposals become more real, it will be important to track not only public sentiment and participation, but also helping people understand that with the last comp plan, major update to the comp plan, we underestimated the number of people moving here by half. And that has created the situation in which the people that I grew up with in Ballard aren't able to afford to live in Ballard. The family I grew up in here in Ballard would not be able to afford Ballard. The playground that I played on as a child is out of reach to that family I grew up in. So, I think that as we come closer to May, when the draft plan and the draft EIS are published and for public consumption, I think it's going to get more real for Seattleites, and I think that that's really where we had scoping comments due last August. We extended it. I asked OPCD to extend it by double just because I didn't think that people were participating in August, and it was true. And we've got more participation happening right now. I would say every time there's an opportunity for participation, I am noticing more people participating. So I think those questions will come more fully in May. The answers to your questions, Matt, will come more fully in May.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And just to make it clear, we have not, as a commission, had a discussion about Seattle for Everyone's position on things. So, so that was reflective of Matt as a commissioner's individual opinion, because we have not come to a collective discussion around that. So I just wanted to make that clear for both Councilmember Strauss and the general public and anyone who might be listening in. With that, I will move to Rick and then Michaela.
Thanks, Jamie, and thank you, Councilmember Strauss. So Matt sort of stole my question, so now I have to figure out how to maybe ask it differently. One thing we have noted as a commission is that this is in all likelihood the most consequential major update to the comprehensive plan in the city's history. I mean, if you look at our intertwined crises of housing affordability and climate change, we don't have a lot of time to keep talking about this. We really need to take some some bold action. And I think our issue briefs pretty well outline a lot of the positions and thinking of the commission on that bold action. And as you've noted, we undershot our population growth last time. We absolutely cannot afford to do the same thing twice. Anecdotally, and Matt referred, I think Matt was primarily referring to the online community engagement hub, but even at I've been to 2 of the in-person community engagement events, and I've been really struck by how different the content and the tone of the discussion is now than it was, say, 6 years ago when we were debating MHA. It sounds really different. And so one question I have is, are you hearing that as well? Second is, can we really leverage that, which is kind of Matt's question. And then I guess my third question is how can the Planning Commission help?
Yeah, Rick, great question. I am hearing that as well. I'll be candid in my worry that I think that it is the overly involved residents of the city that are interested in land use at this time and not your everyday person who has a busy life. So that's my worry with where we are in this stage, because every stage of outreach, I've noticed more voices coming in. So I'm just continuing to track it. What was your first question? Sorry.
Well, I think my first question was how do we leverage this shift? But what I'm hearing, well, my first question was, are you hearing the same thing? And what I'm hearing is you're saying yes, but cautiously so.
That's right. So
the next question was just how do we leverage this to really make the kind of bold changes that we really need to make, and how can the commission help in this effort?
Yeah, so I think that there is a lot of emotional attachment to land use conversations, and then there's policy focus on land use decisions. And this is because land use decisions impact our built environment that shapes our lives, right? It shapes how we feel about our community. I will share from my own experience here in Ballard, watching infill development come in was a very emotionally challenging for me. Watching my friends get pushed out of the neighborhood, watching the neighborhood that I grew up in literally torn down. I guess I started this meeting, I'm still looking at the bulldozers working in the neighborhood of tearing down the building that the coffee shop was in, that my friend worked in when I was learning to drive, right? Like the neighborhood that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. And the changes that have occurred have increased the vibrancy tenfold. This neighborhood has more vibrancy than it ever has before. And there was a period of time where the neighborhood here only felt the detrimental impacts of change and had not started yet experiencing the benefits of new neighbors, more people, and density. And so I think that, Ballard had incentive zoning before the rest of the city. So we were a little bit more on the cut, on the edge, and we were the test case for the city. Some things didn't work, some things worked really well. But I guess what I'm sharing is I think what you're hearing, that sentiment of what's different from 6 years ago from today, is that when you are looking at a policy and have not actually seen how it changes, there's more worry than excitement. And now we have come around the bend, at least here in Ballard, to see the real true benefits of all of these new people and living in a dense area. So I think that's probably what's changed, is that people are really recognizing these benefits because they're finally being able to experience the benefits rather than having a policy brief that says, let me convince you with words that everything's going to be okay.
Thanks. That's actually a great observation. I'm wondering if part of it might also be that more people know more people who are really being impacted by the housing costs and other challenges as well.
100%.
But thanks for that. That's really helpful.
All right, I'm gonna pass it to our resident affordable housing expert, Michaela, next.
Good morning. I am a one-trick pony. I'm sure you all can anticipate what I might talk about. Good morning, Councilmember Strauss. We're really appreciative that you're here today and that you joined us so early in the morning. And no judgment from us if you fumbled over your words, because it's hard for us too this time of day. Matt and Rick actually stole my specific questions, so all I'm left with are some sort of comments and encouragement for you throughout this year. Is that it is going to take some extremely bold action to meet the needs and to plan for the growth that we know is coming our way. And that this time around, not only do we have to plan for a total number, but we at the state has directed Seattle and all cities now to also plan for needs at different income levels. And so going back to these comments about your friends not being able to afford to live in the community anymore, I encourage you to ask tough questions about what are Seattle strategies for meeting needs where the needs are the greatest. And how are we engaging the communities who are affected by the lack of housing choice across Seattle, and prioritizing and lifting up kind of their input in the comprehensive plan update, so that we're not just hearing from longtime from a certain set of residents who typically engage in these processes. And it's you know, we have laid out some data, some policy recommendations of how like kind of a playbook for how that could be done. But we're also encouraging your planners to be as creative as possible in their approaches. And if there's anything we can do to support the land use committee, if you have questions, you need additional information, please let us know. I think we would be happy to engage.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. I think, you know, what you just said really brought up one of the experiences I had at the Loyal Heights Major Comp Plan outreach event, which in the group, there was an individual who was speaking of affordable housing as if affordable housing is built only for people who are poor. I'm sure that there's a better way of saying that, a more politically correct way of saying that. But what I think that folks who associate affordable housing with super low incomes don't recognize is that affordable housing in Seattle is for everyday people. It's for the school teachers, it's for the nurses, it's for the firefighters, it's for the baristas. It is for the people who used to be able to afford market rate in Ballard. Market rate in Ballard used to be $450. When I moved back to Seattle in 2012, I was able to rent a studio apartment in Upper Fremont for $650. That doesn't exist anymore, right? Like, the people who work for the state legislature, the people who work for the state, who work for the city. When I was working as staff for the city, half of my income was going to rent. This, like, it is. So I think that, you know, one of the things that you could do is really, you know, meet people who don't necessarily have the same opinion as you, and not, you know, fight them or get into an argument, but really into that conversation of, you know, calling people in rather than calling them out, to understand that when we're talking about affordable housing, we're talking about everyday people that make our world tick.
Thanks, Councilmember Strauss. I really appreciate what you just said, as well as someone who, as a youth, when I was a youth worker, you know, being just above the cutoff for a lot of affordable housing too, and not being able to qualify for those things, but then not being able to afford market rate rent, and then moving further and further out of the city. And I know that there's many folks who are, you know, social workers and, you know, especially in the nonprofit world, who that is a very real choice where you're like 40 to 50% of your income is going to rent. So that narrative of like, it is the people who contribute to our city in many different ways. And if we want to hold on to the diversity of our city, we need to be able to make options available for everyone. So, but that's not my question, my comment. What I wanted to say was, I've really appreciated, we've had several briefings from OPCD about this, but I really appreciated that for this comprehensive plan update and for that the council increased the community engagement budget, which I think allowed for, I mean, there's always room for more, I will say, but I did appreciate that there was a chunk of money set aside to pilot partnering directly with community-based organizations from communities that were have traditionally been underrepresented in the engagement on these conversations about land use and the comprehensive plan update. And I'm partnering with one of those organizations to help them with their engagement, and I think that has been really transformative to have funding to actually support communities and translating really technical things into ways their community can understand and relate to, and then doing culturally relevant programming and building a relationship with city staff. They also have a cool kind of a similar program for STP, and I know SDOT has been also doing that. The numbers are small, like it's only a handful of organizations that are getting those resources. So again, there's many communities we're probably missing from that. So my hope is that that could get expanded in the future. My other concern is how are we going to see the results of that actually show up in the plan itself? So we're kind of at that stage of all this feedback has come in, all of this input has come in, we've done all this really great engagement. How is that actually going to show up beyond just a look at all the great people we engaged, right? So how are communities going to be able to see themselves in the plan at the end and say, yes, it was worth my time to engage on that? So that's something that I know we'll be tracking closely, and I hope that you will also pay attention to. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's spot on, and I wish we could have put more money in, but it's been a tough budget cycle this year at least. And we did it because we know that there are a lot of people in the city of Seattle that have lived here for a very long time and know exactly how to participate because it is habit at this time. And it's also really important to hear from people who have not been trained, educated, or taught how to participate. So this is, Councilmember Mosqueda, budget chair, has been really helpful working with me in this regard. So it's just great to have her as a partner. And Vanessa, I can stick on to answer if questions of folks who haven't answered questions yet.
Yes, I definitely want to get to Dalton.
Yeah, I just had honestly just a quick comment. I think there's been a lot of great discussion on things that I was curious about, so thank you for answering those throughout this 30 minutes. But I guess my final comment would just be kind of bouncing off what Jamie said about community engagement. I think it's been really refreshing to see different avenues that are happening online in terms of like social media efforts, as well as holding like online comp plan meetings. I think that it's been refreshing, especially speaking in my perspective as like a 23-year-old. It's sometimes daunting to go to community engagement events that are in person, because there are a lot of people in Seattle that take pride and have lived here for 40 years and are almost professionals in terms of like Seattle's history. And I'm young and I'm still learning a lot, and I think that a lot of these online platforms or seeing a presence on social media, it feels like it gives me a voice. And I think I also I studied planning, so I think me, it's very different from a lot of other people my age who are like, I don't have a lot of stake in that, and also I don't know what to say kind of thing when entering those conversations. So it has just been really refreshing to see online avenues, and I think that increases the ability for everyone to comment, and especially the youth. So yeah.
Well, Dalton, we know you're in Ballard right now because of your background. I have that same paneling in my place.
Yeah, it's from like the 80s or something like that. That wood paneling.
I mean, and that's the interesting thing about Ballard is you can tell the old Ballard houses because they have the same plants. Everyone has a rhododendron and a primrose, chain link fence, oftentimes bars on the basement windows, and literally the same linoleum and the same siding. So it's great to see it in an old Ballard house. And with that, like I do, walking tours of the history of our area, because it is important to know where we come from to see where we are going. If we come in with just an eraser pen or just with a bulldozer that isn't focused and strategic, we'll erase a lot of important things. We've already seen that happen in our city where, my district office is on top of where there was a village, an indigenous village for time immemorial. Ballard has had people living in it since the beginning of time. And that history has been erased, and we're working to bring that history back. And if we're not careful with how we continue to redevelop, we'll lose some of that history. Like we've got, an ice rink here in Ballard that probably had people who played for the Metropolitans and won the Stanley Cup play in it. But right now, you'd blink and you'd miss it. Jacques Cousteau's boats were built here in Ballard. There's some really interesting and amazing history that's just right beneath our feet, and I find it to be critical to understand where we're going. Like the children's section of the Ballard Library that I learned to read in is now a Pilates studio. I think it's kind of funny, but and that's okay because that was a building built in the 1960s, and the Carnegie Library is still here. But if they'd torn down the Carnegie Library to build a Pilates studio, there would be a problem with that, right? Like, how do we grow gracefully to keep the things that make our community unique while making space for the doubling of population that we didn't expect to have? And then I'm going to put my land use clerk Naomi Lewis's email in the chat. Dalton, I'd love to connect with you and her and maybe take a walk around the neighborhood. I know that we connected over winter break, but it was winter break, so.
Well, thank you so much, Councilmember Strauss, for making time for us this morning. We really appreciate it and a really great conversation. We want to be respectful of your time and thank you for staying a little bit extra for us. Any other commissioners, if you have questions or comments, we can follow up with your staff via email, or I believe Vanessa will take care of that. But yes, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to continuing to work with you.
See you soon. Thanks for all your work, because I also know that this is a volunteer position and that you're not being compensated for your 7:30 a.m. meetings. So keep up the great work. Great to see everyone. Mark, I hope the young ones either learn the correct technique or get better. See ya.
And to think we used to get free coffee, Vanessa.
If you all came downtown, I'd buy you coffee.
How about the snacks?
Next time you're all here.
And the snacks.
And snacks. No coffee for Rocky though. Hot chocolate for Rocky.
All right, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is our, and I'm looking at the agenda item and I'm like, hearing Councilmember Strauss, I feel like we can say the Maritime and Industrial Strategy. We're going to do a preliminary discussion. Staff are going to lead us in a discussion of the past comments of the commission related to the Maritime and Industrial Strategy as we begin to prepare comments on the related comprehensive plan amendments that will be considered by City Council in the spring. So this is just a kind of a review, and then this is our first kind of foray into thinking about how we might want to approach this moving forward. So with that, I will pass it to John, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Jamie. So as indicated, we don't have a lot of time this morning. We just wanted to have what we're calling a preliminary discussion about the industrial maritime strategy comment letter that we will be preparing over the next few months. The timing is to be determined based on when the comprehensive plan amendments are transmitted, but we just wanted to prepare the commission for that and also reflect a little bit back on the discussion from 2 weeks ago when we had a briefing from OPCD on this, so that we are prepared to move into our comment letter. Olivia, if you go to the next slide. So I just wanted to take you back in time just a little bit, very briefly. I'm not actually going to go into the details of the commission's draft EIS comment letter, but just as a reminder, that letter was prepared over several meetings, and it was in February of 22 that we finally submitted that comment letter. I sent it out this week, so I hope you've all had a chance to review that comment letter. It's 13 pages in length, so it's very detailed. It covered a lot of material. The major topics are on the screen. The comments included a significant section on equity and environmental justice, a section on land and shoreline use, a section on housing, another on transportation, and then sections on other information that was included in the draft EIS, biological resources and resiliency, and then environmental health and compatibility. I do encourage you all to go back and review that comment letter so that you're familiar with what the commission said on the draft EIS. So that's almost a year ago. So I realize that is a long time ago, but a lot of work has been done on the industrial maritime strategy since then. If you could go to the next slide, Olivia. So just in terms of a timeline, the final EIS was published in September of 2022. And in October of 2022, OPCD staff, Jim Holmes, came to the Land Use and Transportation Committee and gave us an overview of what was included in the final EIS, specifically focusing on the preferred alternative that was selected in the FEIS with the blessing of their stakeholder advisory committee that had been working on this project through the duration. So that was in October, and I realized not all commissioners were part of that meeting. But 2 weeks ago at the January 12th full commission, Jim Holmes came and briefed us again on the preferred alternative from the FEIS, as well as gave us a preview of the comprehensive plan amendments and the policy discussions that will go into those amendments. I actually went back and reviewed the two presentations, the one from October of last year and the one from 2 weeks ago, and 15 of the 20 slides were exactly the same. They were basically describing the results of the FEIS and the preferred alternative. So to some of you, that was not new information. I realize it may have been new information for some of you, but he did provide some additional information in some additional slides 2 weeks ago. So primarily what we wanted to do today is just have a discussion on where commissioners are and what you're thinking on what you've seen on the preferred alternative. And we do want to prepare for the comprehensive plan amendments that will be transmitted, and we will be preparing a comment letter over the next several meetings leading into the spring. We don't know the date when those will be transmitted, and we have yet to see the actual text of the comprehensive plan amendments, but that is why we had OPCD staff come 2 weeks ago to give you a preview. So I don't have a lot more to add at this point. We do want to leave time for discussion. We have about 15 minutes. So I do want to open up for mostly for comments and discussion, just so we can kind of hear where you all are, and so that we can move into a more substantive discussion over the next several meetings and months on a schedule to be determined. Vanessa, do you have anything you want to add?
Thanks, John. The one thing I will add for members of the public listening into our meeting, if you're wondering about where you might find the Planning Commission's comment letter on the draft EIS of the Maritime Industrial Strategy from last February, it is on our website. Seattle, if you just look up Seattle Planning Commission on the homepage, there is a blue box that says our work. If you go to that, click on our work, and Maritime Industrial Strategy is noted about 4 lines down on that page.
So Jamie, perhaps you want to facilitate the discussion with commissioners putting their names in the chat.
No names in the chat just yet, but I did put in a question of, like, can you speak to the few new things that were added for the January 12th meeting? What they were?
Oh, just additional detailed slides. One that focused a little bit more on the map of the SODO and Stadium District area and the 3 different zoning proposals for that area, with industry and innovation being the new category focused around the transit station, and then the urban industrial zone around the Stadium District and to the south of the Stadium District, and then surrounded by the more traditional MML, the Maritime Manufacturing and Logistics. There was an additional slide with details, kind of more development standards information for the industry and innovation zone, as well as more information, more detailed information on the Stadium District. And I know there were some questions about that. And I also wanted to bring it to your attention that I did provide a brief summary over email this week of for your Cliffs Notes consideration that consolidates and provides some of that information in a simple format. So not a lot of new information, it's just a few additional slides.
Thanks for that. All right, so we have a couple folks in the queue. Go ahead and add your name into the chat. And if you have a response to somebody else's comment, make sure that you kind of note that in your chat so we can try to kind of group similar topics together. So we'll go to Matt and then Rocky.
Okay, let's see. I think my concern is, like, now that we're to the details phase, we can kind of see how this would shake out. I don't know if this was one of the original slides or not, but I thought that, like, just looking at the FAR, having just the first 0.5 FAR be, industrial use, and then 5 times that be for non-industrial use, other uses, just means that, and the ability to transfer those rights, or transfer that, build that space elsewhere, means that in that zone, in the industry and innovation zone around light rail, we're not going to see a lot of industrial development. That is going to eventually turn into, I mean, there's a height limit of 160 feet. So we're looking at large non-industrial, like really tall non-industrial buildings. And so I kind of question the ability to transfer rights, the breakdown of the FAR 0.5 to 6, versus, 6 overall, that we're going to just end up not preserving industrial land in that area. And maybe that's okay. but it's kind of runs a little counter to the stated goal of preserving the maritime or the industrial lands. If we're basically creating a huge incentive. I understand why shareholders, i.e. landowners in that area, are excited about this because you've gone, I don't know, the FAR is what, at 1.5 or 2 or something like that right now, and now you're saying you can build something that is 3 times bigger and it's going to be higher rent per square foot buildings. I wonder if and that's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, because that's actually, really like dense job, or the ability, that's the scale that we would need to like create a job center, but I think we need to think about it more like, it's going to be more like the big development that's happening in Ballard or U Village or in University District, not like what we've seen in the past. So that's why I was really surprised about the briefing at the last meeting, is just like looking at, and also the stadium district, that's going to be hotels, so I think we just have to be clear-eyed about what this means, and I don't know about need to maybe I don't know drop the artifice of talking about this as a preservation of maritime and industrial lands. If we're going to be creating these job centers that have very little industrial use in them. Sorry, that was a big rant.
No, I think
that was a lot.
Oh, go ahead, Rocky.
I didn't mean to.
I was going to call on you.
That was a lot, Matt. I will say I agree with everything you said. I obviously have a lot of history with maritime and industrial zoning strategy, et cetera, over the administrations, and I will just kind of agree that price per foot rents are pretty critical of success of industrial firms, right? And so if your resulting development is high price per foot office, retail, residential prices per foot, you're not going to get industrial. So I agree on that. We should definitely talk more. But the point of my jumping in for a comment was just to say that I'd like to be involved in in this letter writing effort. And so however I can help, please let me know.
Thank you, Rocky.
Go to Michaela next.
I don't need to rehash everything that Matt said, but those were the things that were on my mind as well. New information was just making me feel like they're framing this as a preservation strategy. That's not the case. And I think we as a commission just need to be really aware of what the consequences are of this proposal. It's practically speaking, it's transforming the Stadium Soto district into a mixed-use residential hotel area, and we've got to balance it. We've, as a commission, have struggled to figure out how we feel about dense development around light rail stations in the industrial lands, and so I was somewhat, like, okay, I think I understand how you landed where you did there, but there just was some new information in my perspective that was substantively different than my expectations of what I thought this would result in. And I think that's why I had such a strong reaction at the last meeting. And I also think maybe I missed a meeting in the fall when oh, okay, no, that was a land use committee presentation. Yeah, it was new information to me, and I apologize for having such a strong reaction. I was just a little confused. So if we're going to discuss something, I kind of want to discuss the themes that both Matt and Rocky have elevated.
Thanks, Michaela. And I don't think you have to apologize for that reaction. I think many of us were having clearly there's a theme in the comments, and I agree with everyone there around wanting to talk about that. I'm going to go to Radhika. Radhika, are you there?
Radhika, you're on mute.
Sorry, I missed the last meeting, but my understanding was that the MML, the Maritime Manufacturing and Logistics Zone, was 86% of the new zoning. And that one's a completely preservation-oriented zone. It's just is it the Industry Innovation Zone, which is just 6% of the total zoning that will have that FAR difference. And that 6% is around transit and in neighborhood centers, so it's still definitely focused on industrial preservation. Is it different though? Is your understanding that it is the MML zoning that has the FAR difference?
No, Radhika, everything you said is correct.
Yeah, no, that's my understanding.
And then I'll just add the third category is the urban industrial, which is exactly the same as replacing the industrial buffer zone with the exact same amount of land.
Yeah, so with the Duwamish around like 5,000 acres or so, and 86% of it still focused on industrial uses, and only 6% allowing non-industrial uses at a higher FAR, I think it's still a maritime and industrial strategy.
Okay, Rick and then Rocky.
Yeah, I appreciate Radhika's comments. I guess I was not very surprised by what was presented most recently. The TDR approach to industrial uses was a little bit surprising to me. Somehow I missed that part. But otherwise, it was fairly consistent with what I was expecting. I mean, very early on, we saw diagrams that showed industrial uses on the ground floor and multiple stories, 4 or 5 stories of commercial uses above. The idea being that the commercial uses will subsidize the construction of the industrial uses at the ground floor. One thing that isn't clear to me is whether the entirety or a certain percentage, I'm assuming there's a minimum percentage of the ground floor that has to be reserved for industrial use. But although the thing to remember is there's no guarantee that it will be occupied by industrial uses. It will be designed to accommodate industrial uses, and there will be expense related to that. So it probably makes sense that industrial uses will move in there, but there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. I appreciate Radhika's comment because I do think a significant part of this process, and it's one of the reasons, again, we know how long this has been going on and we know how contentious it's been, and it's quite remarkable that no appeals were filed. So I do think as a commission, we need to have some respect for the process, which we were not part of. But I think, you know, in terms of balancing, leveraging our substantial investment in light rail transit in these areas with preservation of existing industrial uses. And I think a really critical part of this was greater clarity and predictability regarding what's going to happen in these zones. That I think has been achieved. So I guess I have fewer concerns about the plan itself, more concerns about whether or not it's actually going to work as intended.
So I was going to just follow up and say, so along the lines of what Radhika said, is that, you know, this is the result of decades of compromise between, you know, landowners who want higher rent, office, retail, and housing, and industrial preservation folks. And so I think Radhika outlined that compromise well. There's a naming problem with the effort now, right? It's not a preservation strategy; it's a preservation and a compromise strategy. I'm not sure how you say it. I would just echo what Rick said too. You know, the idea is that the office above is supposed to offset the cost of the industrial, not just for construction, but also for rents. And the fear around, you know, someone wrote rents dictate what the use will be. That's not true, actually. And a free market it is, but we control what uses go into buildings through our land use regulations. And so the question to me is one of enforcement, seeing what uses are actually in those buildings. So there's some sort of accountability, which would be done through SDCI. And I think the worry is not that these spaces won't be built for industrial, they will. It's not that they won't be tried to be leased out for industrial, they will. And they might even get tenants. But years down the road, if they can't get tenants at the rents they need, they'll go whining back to the city and say, this doesn't work. We need to change it so that we can put retail at those spaces. So that's my worry. Not sure if that helps.
I would second both of. Oh, sorry, I didn't put my name in the queue, but
thank you. Is that Matt? Or
Mark,
no,
sorry.
Mark. That's Mark. Okay, thanks. Just want to make sure.
I do have stuff to say, though.
People know.
I've got more.
Ahead.
Sorry, I'll make it quick. I guess I would just second both Rick and Rocky's sentiment. Both of those points I thought were well put, and my overall take on it was the percentage amount and what they were kind of looking for was kind of lines and what we're kind of already looking at previously, but I do still kind of question the long-term enforcement and viability of kind of those projects. So one thing I will say, just as a construction person and very interested much in the cross-laminated timber, the CLT type projects and mass timber projects, that using mass timber as an incentive, I think, because that's something that I think, for and this is not specific just to the Maritime, but I do think it's something that it needs a little bit more scale to it. But once the scale is there, the price of that product comes down, and I think from both greenhouse gas emissions perspective and just construction process, it's a very neat and awesome new kind of technology in the construction field, but it's just not quite viable yet on a lot of projects because of the expense. So using that as an incentive, I think is something in other avenues of the city should look at, but that's just my personal opinion. So.
Okay, we do have one public comment that we need to save some time for. Vanessa, is it long? Can you do it in 1 minute?
It is long, and I'm not
dear.
going to be able to do it to read the entire letter in 2 minutes. So, but I will send it all on to you all, and for members of the public listening in, it will be provided as part of the minutes as well once those are approved at our next meeting.
Okay, because I want to make sure we get to Rose, since Rose hasn't had a chance to comment in this commission meeting yet today. So go ahead, Rose. Rose, you're on mute if you're talking. We can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, now we can.
Excellent. My headphones died. So I wasn't sure if we had the amendments yet to review. I might have missed them. I'm in a little bit of a haze this morning, but specifically, I was noticing that job growth in the preferred alternative does not reflect what we had commented on before, where we had requested incentives to increase jobs and access in the Duwamish compared to Ballard. The preferred alternative shows increased more than the other alternatives, jobs going to Ballard and Interbay. So I wanted to point that out, and also that flooding risk is higher in Soto. So I just wanted to make sure I know what we're commenting on for the amendments, and then highlight that if possible, it would be nice to highlight and reiterate our comments to, consider mitigation measures to enhance environmental justice.
Thank you for those comments, Rose.
And Rose, just for clarification, Rose, the amendments have not been transmitted by the executive to council yet, and as soon as they are, we will forward them on to you, and staff will do some analysis based on the conversation that we've had today. And also just a reminder that we will have several more opportunities to discuss the strategy as well as the amendments once we receive the amendments.
Thanks, Vanessa. So you're going to send this letter, the comment letter, to the commission, right, Vanessa?
I will send it, and I will also take 2 minutes to read it if people can stay for 2 more minutes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, can you just do the preamble about public comment?
Yes, preamble. All right. The commission, just as a heads up for members of the public, the commission provides time for public comment at all meetings. A reminder that we do not hold public hearings and we are an advisory body. We make recommendations to elected leaders who in turn make the actual decisions, and individuals who make comments to the commission should remember that the mayor and the city council make the actual decisions. We encourage individuals and organizations to provide their comments appropriately directly to elected officials. I invite Vanessa to share our comment letter that we have.
Thank you. I will start. Over the past 25 years, we've worked to invest and improve Seattle's industrial property resources. Our view is long-term. We believe the businesses and people we serve matter, and that our service to others includes enhancing and inspiring our community. The following words to the Planning Commission are in that spirit, and if we overlap your industrial knowledge or perspectives, we apologize. For this letter, we are not addressing maritime lands, which are largely unaffected by the proposed land use legislation. Our focus is on the broad categories of industry and production in which our specific experience provides some general perspective on why zoning reform is necessary. First, the good news. Modern production is growing in the U.S. as innovation in global markets create new jobs and change industries, relationships, and places to produce. 40 years of trends are changing as cross-border trade in manufactured goods decreases while trade in services increases, and the opportunity for local distributed production is emerging to complement centralized manufacturing. Globalization includes offshoring production to countries where wages are very, very low. However, wages are no longer the driving force in global trade flows. Trade within regions like the EU28 or Asia Pacific is growing faster than international long-haul trade. In places of low wages, R&D, innovation, and investment in intangible assets are increasingly important to virtually every industry. Regionalization is increasing dramatically for practical reasons. China is purchasing what it produces. By 2030, emerging market consumers may account for more than half of global demand. Foreign and domestic companies producing in these countries will sell to those domestic customers. Trade services may be harder to measure than manufactured goods. Still, the U.S. appears to be running a substantial surplus in the exports of business services, transportation services, tourism, and education. The list will grow to include many personal services, including remote healthcare. Even now, 30% of the created value of an automobile comes from the services that go into it. The R&D and design, the accounting and legal, the engineering, distribution and logistics, the marketing and sales are all value-added services linked to the manufactured product. Boeing has long been an example of how engineering and computing services are integral to production. There is more to this letter, which I will send to the commission and will be included in our minutes, which will be approved at our next Planning Commission meeting. And this letter was from the Freehold Group LLC, Freehold Investments LLC, and signed by Jeffrey Thompson. Thank you all for staying a few minutes later.
Thanks, Vanessa. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for waking up this morning.
See you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.